The Spiritual Legacy of India and Memories of the Past. The true heart of Indian culture has always been defined by a deep quest for ultimate truths and the sacred foundational bond between a guru and their disciple. My own spiritual path eventually led me to a Christ-like master whose beautiful, holy life was shaped for eternity. He belonged to that rare lineage of great spiritual masters who constitute India's truest enduring wealth, arriving in every generation to safeguard their land from the spiritual decay that befell ancient empires like Babylon and Egypt. My very earliest memories stretch back to a distant life spent as a yogi amidst the cold snows of the Himalayas. Through a timeless, mysterious connection, these brief glimpses of my past also granted me intuitive flashes of what my future would hold. The struggles of infancy. The helpless frustrations of being a baby remain clearly imprinted on my mind. I remember feeling deeply resentful of my physical limitations, unable to walk or express myself freely. Recognizing the helplessness of my tiny body, deep surges of prayer would rise within me. My rich inner life took the silent form of words in many different languages. Amid this internal chaos of tongues, my ears gradually adapted to the surrounding Bengali words spoken by my family. It is fascinating how vast an infant's mind truly is, even though adults mistakenly believe it is limited only to simple toys and games. This intense mental activity, contrasted with an unyielding and unresponsive body, often caused me to throw stubborn, crying fits. I can still recall how bewildered my family was by my frequent distress. Yet, happier memories also fill my mind. My mother's loving embraces, my first attempts at speaking, and my initial unsteady steps. These early milestones, though quickly forgotten by most, form the natural foundation of a child's self-confidence. The eternal nature of consciousness. Such far-reaching memories are not unique to me. Many advanced yogis are known to maintain unbroken self-awareness even through the dramatic transitions of life and death. If a human being were nothing more than a physical body, its destruction would mean the absolute end of identity. But if the prophets across the millennia have spoken the truth, man is essentially a spiritual creature. The enduring core of our ego is only temporarily connected to physical sense perceptions. While unusual, clear memories of infancy are not entirely rare. During my travels to many countries, I have heard similar early recollections from highly truthful men and women. My family and the harmony of my parents. I was born in the final decade of the 19th century and spent my first 8 years in Gorakhpur, my birthplace in northeastern India. Our family consisted of 8 children, 4 boys and 4 girls, and I, Mukunda Lal Ghosh, was the second son and 4th child. My parents were Bengalis belonging to the Kshatriya caste, and both were blessed with deeply spiritual natures. Their love for one another was quiet, dignified, and never superficial. This perfect harmony between them served as a calm, stable center for the chaotic lives of 8 growing children. My father, Bhagavati Charan Ghosh, was a kind, serious, and sometimes strict man. Although we children loved him deeply, we always maintained a respectful distance. He was an exceptional mathematician and logician, guided mostly by his intellect. My mother, on the other hand, was a queen of hearts who raised us entirely through love. After her passing, father began to show more of his inner tenderness, and I noticed that his gaze would often mirror the soft, loving look of my mother. Lessons in charity and logic. It was in mother's presence that we received our first introduction to the sacred scriptures. She masterfully used stories from the Mahabharata and the Ramayana to teach us discipline, beautifully balancing instruction with gentle correction. To show our respect for father, mother would carefully dress us every afternoon to welcome him home from work. He held a high executive position with the Bengal-Nagpur Railway, which required frequent travel, causing our family to live in several cities during my childhood. Mother was incredibly generous to the poor, always offering an open hand. Father was also kind-hearted, but his strict respect for order extended to the household finances. Once, within a single fortnight, mother spent more on feeding the needy than father's entire monthly salary. When father gently asked her to keep her charities within a reasonable limit, mother was deeply hurt by the mild rebuke. Without revealing the disagreement to us children, she ordered a carriage and announced she was leaving for her mother's home. As we broke into panicked crying, our maternal uncle arrived at the perfect moment, offering father some wise, timeless advice. After father spoke a few comforting words, mother happily dismissed the carriage, ending the only marital conflict I ever witnessed between them. I do, however, recall a characteristic debate between them. Mother once asked for 10 rupees to help a poor woman who had just come to the house. Father resisted, suggesting 1 rupee was enough, and explained how his own sudden poverty after the death of his elders had taught him the harsh value of money. He recounted how a wealthy judge had once refused him a single rupee a month during his university days, remarking that even a rupee was important. Mother countered with instant heart logic, asking if he wished for this poor woman to painfully remember his refusal of 10 rupees, just as he still bitterly remembered the judge's denial. Recognizing she had won, father opened his wallet and handed over the money with his full goodwill. Father's initial instinct was often to say no to new proposals, but this caution was simply his way of ensuring due reflection. I always found him balanced and reasonable. If I could back up my requests with a solid argument, he would always grant what I wanted, whether it was a vacation or a new motorcycle. Father's spiritual discipline. Though father was a strict disciplinarian with us, he was incredibly austere with himself. He never sought entertainment at theaters, finding his recreation instead in spiritual practices and reading the Bhagavad Gita. Shunning all luxury, he would wear a single pair of shoes until they were completely worn out. Even when his sons bought cars, father was perfectly content taking the trolley car to his office. Accumulating wealth for power was entirely foreign to his nature. After helping to organize the Calcutta Urban Bank, he refused to take any shares for himself, viewing the work purely as a civic duty performed in his spare time. Years after his retirement, an English auditor discovered that father had never claimed overdue bonuses, leaving a massive sum of back compensation untouched. When questioned about it by my youngest brother, father simply replied that one who seeks even-mindedness is neither overjoyed by gain nor depressed by loss, knowing we arrive in this world penniless and leave it without a single rupee. The miraculous initiation of my parents. Early in their marriage, my parents became disciples of the great master Lahiri Mahasaya of Banaras, a bond that deepened father's spiritual nature. Father first heard of the master through Abhinash Babu, an employee at his office, who used to entertain my young ears with stories of Indian saints, always concluding with the superior greatness of his own guru. One summer afternoon, Abhinash told me the remarkable story of how my father became a disciple. Years prior, Abhinash had asked father for a week's leave to visit Lahiri Mahasaya, but father ridiculed the request, telling him to focus on his work rather than becoming a religious fanatic. As a disappointed Abhinash walked home through a woodland path, father passed him in a palanquin. Dismissing his servants, father walked alongside Abhinash to console him, lecturing him on the benefits of worldly success. But Abhinash's heart was inwardly crying out for his guru. Suddenly, as they paused by a tranquil field, the form of Lahiri Mahasaya materialized directly in front of them. The master spoke aloud, telling father he was being too hard on his employee, and then vanished as mysteriously as he had appeared. Stunned into motionlessness, father immediately changed his mind, granting Abhinash leave and declaring that he too would travel to Banaras the following day to meet this master who could materialize at will. The following day, my parents and Abhinash traveled to Banaras. When they entered the master's secluded parlor, Lahiri Mahasaya looked at father and repeated the exact words from the field. "Bhagavati, you are too hard on your employee." To their immense joy, he initiated my parents into the spiritual path of Kriya Yoga. The master took a deep interest in my upcoming birth, noting that my life would be forever linked to his own. The presence of Lahiri Mahasaya. Lahiri Mahasaya left this world shortly after I entered it, but his framed photograph always held a place of honor on our family altar. Mother and I would spend mornings and evenings meditating before this shrine, offering flowers and incense. This picture had a profound influence on my life. As I grew, the image of the master seemed to come alive during meditation, stepping out of its frame to sit before me. When I tried to touch his luminous body, it would revert to a photograph. Over time, he transformed in my mind from a mere picture into a living, guiding presence to whom I prayed in moments of confusion. Though I initially grieved his physical absence, I stopped mourning as I discovered his spiritual omnipresence, recalling his assurance to disciples that he was always accessible through spiritual sight. A miraculous healing. When I was about 8 years old, I was healed of Asiatic cholera through this photograph. My case was fatal, and the doctors had given up hope. At my bedside, mother frantically pointed to the picture on the wall and told me to bow to him mentally, promises that if I showed true devotion, my life would be spared. I gazed at the photograph and saw a blinding light envelop my body and the entire room. Instantly, all my severe symptoms vanished, and I was completely well. I bowed to touch mother's feet in gratitude, and she thanked the omnipresent master for healing her son, having witnessed the same divine light that I did. The origin of the photograph. That sacred photograph, given directly to father, had a miraculous origin. The master disliked being photographed. Once, when a group photo was taken against his wishes, the developed plate showed clear images of all the disciples, but the center space where the master sat was completely blank. An expert photographer named Gangadhar Babu boasted that he could capture the master's image. Taking every precaution, he took 12 separate exposures of the master on a wooden bench, but each plate revealed only the bench and the background screen. The master's form was entirely missing. Weeping with wounded pride, the photographer sought out the Guru, who eventually told him, "I am spirit. Can your camera reflect the omnipresent invisible?" The photographer pleaded that he merely wished for a picture of the bodily temple where that spirit dwelt, and the master kindly agreed to pose the next morning. This time, his holy form appeared sharp and clear on the plate. His features in the photo possess a universal cast, barely suggesting his specific race, and his eyes are half open, symbolizing his focus on both the inner spiritual world and the needs of seekers. A vision of the Himalayas. Shortly after my healing, I experienced a life-changing vision. While sitting on my bed one morning, I wondered what lay behind the darkness of closed eyes. Instantly, an immense flash of light appeared, and divine images of Himalayan yogis meditating in mountain caves played like a miniature cinema across my forehead. When I asked aloud who they were, they answered celestial words that thrilled my heart. As I expressed a deep longing to join them, the vision faded into widening circles of infinite light, and a voice like murmuring clouds revealed itself as the divine light. This ecstatic experience left me with a permanent, lifelong inspiration to seek God as eternal, ever-new joy. The power of the spoken word. Another vivid early childhood memory left me with a permanent scar on my forearm. My older sister Uma and I were sitting under a neem tree while she helped me with my Bengali reader. Uma complained about a painful boil on her leg and brought out a jar of medicinal ointment. I playfully rubbed a bit of the salve onto my healthy arm. When she asked why I was putting medicine on a well arm, I told her I felt I would develop a boil there the next day and wanted to test her ointment. Uma called me a liar, which insulted me. Fueled by deep concentration and indignation, I told her that by the power of my will, I would have a large boil on that exact spot tomorrow, and her own boil would double in size. The next morning, I awoke with a severe boil on my arm, and Uma's boil had doubled. Terrified, she ran to Mother, claiming I was practicing sorcery. Mother gravely advised me never to use the power of words to cause harm, a lesson I never forgot. My boil had to be surgically opened, leaving a permanent scar that serves as a constant reminder of the intense vibratory power hidden within human speech when directed with total focus. The two kites. Later, our family moved to Lahore, where I placed a picture of the Divine Mother in the form of Goddess Kali on our balcony shrine. I held an absolute conviction that any prayer made in that sacred spot would be answered. One day, while standing there with Uma, we watched two kites flying over the narrow lane. When Uma playfully doubted my claim that the Divine Mother granted whatever I asked, challenging me to get the two kites, I began to pray silently. In India, kite runners play a competitive game using strings coated with sharp ground glass to cut an opponent's line. Usually, a cut kite drifts away far over the rooftops, making it impossible to catch from a balcony. Yet, as the match across the street began, the first kite was cut, floated directly toward our balcony, and became momentarily stuck in a cactus plant on the opposite roof, dropping its string perfectly into my hand. I handed it to Uma. Uma dismissed it as a mere accident, saying she would only believe if I caught the second kite. I intensified my prayers. Soon after, the second player's string snapped. The kite danced through the wind directly toward me, and the very same cactus plant caught the string in a perfect loop for me to grab. When I presented the second trophy to Uma, she was utterly stunned by the uncanny event and ran away in fear, fully convinced that the Divine Mother truly listened to my prayers.